you, Bob Jensen.
Thank you, Mita. Lorraine asked me to speak briefly about the 100 years, so I'm going to be going fast, and particularly since I haven't eaten, and I'm a big eater, I'll be going even faster. The Women's Club of Homestead has really a glorious history, and I'm going to try to share some of that with you today. 100 years, 1914 to 2014. This is where it all began. It was called the Evans Hotel. The sign there says Hotel Redlands, which is now Hotel Redland without the S. The ladies met there, and it all began there. There's a plaque also on the porch that honors Mayman Jennings, who was really instrumental in the establishment of all the clubs in the South here and Royal Palm State Park, which became Everglades National Park. That's Flora Evans there on the left side here. That's probably a home, that's not the hotel. While the ladies were waiting to work on the park, they really did some incredible things. They outfitted the Home Economics Department of the Homestead School. They solicited a whole carload of grapefruit, shipped it to New York, sold it for $823, and gave it to the Red Cross to give to families in Europe that had suffered from World War I. They also established the first lending library down here, and women's clubs all over Florida were the first to establish libraries in their community. This library came really from one woman. It was Reverend Cale's wife. She passed away very early in life. He donated the library to the Women's Club. It was established first at the hotel. Now if you go into the Hotel Redland, the bar area is called the library in recognition of this. Mayman Jennings came to Homestead in 1915, and she really came here for one reason, and that was to kind of ignite women to work toward the preservation of the Everglades, and specifically to create a state park. Clubs were established in Homestead, Princeton, Redland, Longview, which is southwest of Florida City, and even the Larkin Club came all the way down. Larkin's about where South Miami is today. And again, she had two things in mind: preserve the Everglades and establish a state park. The highway, which it was really, you're going to see a picture of it, but more like a gravel road to the park. We can thank a woman from this club, Maisie Tweedell. Her husband was the county commissioner, and back then the county commissioners actually supervised work going on in their district, so he had a lot to do with building that road down to the park, and you'll see later on just how important that was. And again, as I said before, 1,000 great Floridians were established some years ago. There were 3 of them from Homestead. One of them is Mayman Jennings, and her plaque is on the Hotel Redland. That's Mayman there. The park was dedicated in 1916 thanks to the work of a lot of the local clubs and the state federation. This is an actual picture of the dedication in November of 1916. 1,000 people or more came down. And they came over a road that you're not going to believe. This is the speaker's platform, which was made out of local wood. This is the club, Women's Club of Homestead, serving 1,000 people lunch in that November day in 1916. And you can see they are all kind of dressed out the same. This was before coolers. This was before a lot of the conveniences we have today. So it was really quite an accomplishment. The caretaker and his family lived in a tent until the lodge was constructed. And throughout the history of the lodge, which the club ran until 1947, the caretaker and his family lived there, but not, of course, in a tent. This is the lodge that the ladies built. A local contractor did the work, J.U. Humphrey. You can see they preserved the trees. Mita and I have been to the site. It's not really accessible now, but we've been there to see where the lodge was. This is a beautiful picture of the lodge. You can see it has a broad porch screened in. The lodge was run as a money-making project so that the ladies could pay for maintaining the park. And there were like several rooms, so you could come, you could have dinner, you could stay there for a week or so, and a lot of really famous people who studied the Everglades came and stayed at the lodge. And the lodge was like just one of the many buildings. They had a garage. This is what it looked like on a postcard. You can see the trees were maintained around it. This is the, I guess you would call this the lobby area with a fireplace, handmade rugs. A slat house. Another way that the ladies were able to pay for continuing to operate the park was through growing of plants, and specifically royal palms. The royal palms that you see on Chrome Avenue and Homestead, some of them came from there, not all of them. The ones that were originally on the Palm Drive in Florida City all came from the park, and I think it was like 163 of them. This is what the road looked like that Maisie Tweedale's husband was responsible for. It was very difficult to build roads in those days. The equipment was very primitive, and a lot of the work was done by hand. This is the Florida Federation of Women's Clubs board meeting at the lodge at the park in 1917. Again, this is a beautiful picture of the lodge. They called it Paradise Key. It was the real name was Royal Palm State Park. It was the first state park in the state of Florida. The ladies maintained it from 1916 until 1947 when they signed it over to the federal government for Everglades National Park. In 1916, the park was operated again. Later, it became the national park. Funding came from a lot of different things. The lodge paid for some of it. They sold the trees, and they leased land to the farmers. And that land was kept free of plants that were not native to this area until the park took it back. Ingram Highway, this is the entrance to the park. This is how it looked probably in 1920. These are Civilian Conservation Corps boys. They came in 1933, stayed through April of 1934, and they did a tremendous amount of work clearing non-native species, opening up trails, strung a telephone line all the way out there. This is the CCC program was a great program that President Roosevelt instituted. He was elected in November of 1932. He took office in March 1st of 1933, and by April he already had plans underway, and people were actually enlisting in the CCC. You had to be from a family that was on welfare, and you had to send $25 of your $30 a month back to your family. This company was formed in Buffalo, New York. They came from Montana. They worked in Montana until it got cold, came here, spent the winter improving our park, and then left. They had a camp downtown, so they really lived in pretty rough circumstances. I actually met two of the young men who came down here after Hurricane Andrew and shared these pictures. The museum probably has 30 pictures of the CCC doing all kinds of different work down here. But they were a great addition to the park. And again, how did we get them so soon? Mayman Jennings had a lot of political influence and made things happen. This is the first clubhouse. It was built on 8th Avenue on land donated by the Loveland family. It was really important because this was the key meeting place in the community for a long, long time. And as an example, when the Rotary Club was formed in the 1920s, they met here. Almost everybody met here. They used it for weddings, much like this facility and its predecessor. This is the third clubhouse. This is the one that Andrew tore apart. An addition was actually put on the back, which made the banquet space much larger. I guess Ruth Campbell's not here? Oh, I'm sorry. The Women's Club bought 9 lots in Northeast Homestead off the courthouse steps. And Ruth Campbell was there, one of those people that went down and bought it, and that's probably like in the 50s. But it was a wonderful facility. The 1920s and 30s, the ladies honored the school faculties, both the Redland and the Homestead. Homestead had a shade tree project in 1922, and again, women of this club were involved in everything. The first clubhouse was built on Northwest 8th Avenue. 1924, we had our first fruit festival here. It was organized by the Redland District Chamber of Commerce, and they had a day designated for different groups from different states and all. The very first day was dedicated to the women's club of this area, and you'll see their float here shortly. Triangle Park, which is where, no, not Casita Tejas, El Toro Taco is located. That's a triangular piece of land. That used to belong to the Florida East Coast Railway. The Women's Club arranged for the, I guess, lease at no cost from the FEC as a park. Later, somehow, the Legion got its name on the park, but it was really the women of this club that made it happen. The library was transferred to the city of Homestead in 1926, and it came downtown, and they formed the Junior Women's Club in 1935. This shows the ladies in the float, the 1924 Redland District Fruit Festival. We had fruit festivals up until a couple years after World War II. There were none during World War II, and they were really very successful, bringing people from all over the country to our community. World War II, the ladies were again very busy. They made surgical dressings, helped with first aid stations. We had all sorts of salvage drives for aluminum, for iron, for rubber, and they participated in all those things. We had a base here, Homestead Army Airfield, and we had a crash boat station out where the park is now, Bayfront Park. They provided, by going out and asking people to donate things that they could not replace, like radios, like playing cards, like chairs and the like, they solicited those things and were able to furnish the day rooms here at the crash station. And then they also sent a radio down to the airfield in the Keys and one to Immokalee. The USO was very important because we had a lot of single men here. This club helped organize the USO, and the juniors were big participants in it also. Is Marianne Muntz here? Oh, I'm really disappointed. After the war, we had something down here. We had a really private relief. It wasn't government run. It was called Far South Emergency Relief, and it was clubs. It was private people. It had nothing to do with the government, but they collected clothing, food, and money, and helped those who were having a tough time of it. James Archer Smith Hospital was a one-story hospital over in the Northeast, and this club furnished a room and later remodeled that room. They sponsored a cancer unit, cancer checkups, blood bank, and here are the two really amazing things. There was a free dental clinic in Homestead for those who couldn't afford to pay for it. It was run with volunteer dentists, and this project won a Miami Herald Award for the club. Back in the days after World War II, the Herald used to highlight and give awards to clubs who really did something spectacular. This club happened to win 2 of them because they also received one for helping to found the Florida Pioneer Museum. Many of the early officers in the museum, as they are today, are women, and some of them are from this club still. This club still provides financial support after all these years. This is really a tough one, but Roger Williams was a great pianist. I guess his most famous song was Autumn Leaves. His aunt lived here, and I have not been able to find her name, but Roger would come here and he'd play at the USO, and the ladies somehow talked him into playing at a concert at Miami-Dade Auditorium, the same Miami-Dade Auditorium as we have today, and they did it as a fundraiser and actually made some money off it. But Roger was a great American and really a great member of the community one of the short times he was here. Leadership. Members of this club have been vice mayors of both Homestead, Florida City. Where's Juanita? Juanita? She's in the kitchen working. Okay. Juanita was vice mayor of Florida City more than once. Ruth Campbell was vice mayor of Homestead more than once. And that's because they were the highest vote getters running for commission and for council. They've served as councilwomen and commissioners, countywide positions, and even today they serve in statewide Florida Federation of Women's Club positions. There was a clubhouse that I've never found a picture of. It was really a home that they used, this club used as an interim in between when they had the first club and they had the one that we saw the picture of that was destroyed by Hurricane Andrew. Mary Ann Muntz sent me an email and she said, are you going to talk about the dental clinic? Are you going to talk about this? Are you going to talk about the cabaret? I sent her back an email and she said, I don't want to influence what you say, but I just wanted to know. So I sent her back an email and said, I'm not going to say anything about the cabaret. So she sent me an email and said, you better say something about the cabaret. And I didn't have the picture, but there's an incredible picture on the table back there of the ladies of this club performing in cabaret. And Mary Ann is one of them, of course. Mary Ann, I think, was the president, like me just holding it up. They look like Rockettes. But Mary Ann was the president, I think, like in 1950, 51. And she's still active in this club and a volunteer at the Florida Pioneer Museum. This is a sad sight. This is the lodge after Hurricane Andrew. When the park took over in 1947, they destroyed everything that the people who had lived there had used forever and ever. And there were a lot of people that lived in Flamingo. They, literally burned their houses down. This lodge they sold. It was brought into Homestead. Unfortunately, it had a really terrible ending, not just the hurricane, but it was like a low-rent facility for single men. And so it's really sad to see what happened to something that had such a glorious history. Now I don't think the park does this, but back in 1947, the Park Service just cleaned everything out that men and women had put there before. Again, 100 years, 1914 to 2014. You can see the club is still very active, aggressively involved in the community, and a very important part of our community. So I want to thank all those who came before this group and thank this group as well.